hopefully you're all back. It's being recorded though, so we're all good, aren't we? So, so this next section is about database searching. So I'm just going to turn off my camera and share my screen. And then hopefully, am I sharing my screen? Share your screen. And then hopefully you can all see my screen now.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Fantastic, lovely. So, so today what I'm going to go over is just helping you become familiar with search strategies, terms and techniques. And then also I'm going to be demoing a database search for you as well. So first of all, I'm sure you already know, but just quickly go over what is a bibliographic database. Well, it's basically a repository of bibliographic or publication records, and each database will provide an index of different journal articles from multiple journals, but like hundreds of journals, thousands sometimes. And that will include the citation of the article, an abstract, and then if there's a full text available, then a link to that as well. And then that really depends on if the library subscribes to it. So you'll be accessing databases if you're accessing through the NHS Athens, then it'll be whatever we subscribe to. If you do have other institutional Athens accounts, if you have a university one, then the full text links will represent, you know, what they subscribe to basically. And so just to give you an idea of how many references are in a database, Medline has 28 million and Embase has 32 million, and they cross over as well. So Medline and Embase, you know, they'll contain same journals, sometimes they'll have different journals, so you do get a repeat of results as well. So because there are so many references in a database, it really is important that database searches need to be focused, because you can just end up with just an uncontrollable amount of references in the end. So the available databases through the Northern Carolines are EBSCO databases, which include Medline, CINAHL, and Psychology and Behavioral Sciences. Ovid databases, which include Embase, RMed, HMIC, Medline again, and Social Policy and Practice. ProQuest, which is PsycInfo, BNI, Psych Articles, and Health Research Premium Collection. And I popped HDAS on there, but I'm not going to go through it because it's being decommissioned by the end of this month. I just wanted to mention it in case some of you are already using HDAS, to stop using it now because it's not going to be around for much longer. HDAS was lovely because it brought together basically all of those databases in one interface, so it was really useful to use. But now you'll see that they're all kind of split across 3 different interfaces. Some of them are repeated, like Medline's repeated, but some of them, you know, in ProQuest, if you wanted to do like a mental health type search, you would probably have to use ProQuest because it's got PsycInfo, and all of them are a little bit different. If you can use one, you'll be able to transfer that knowledge quite easily to another, but they are all slightly different. So today I'm going to be showing you how to do a search on Ovid databases. I'm choosing Ovid because it's got Embase and Medline on there, so it has both of the big ones basically. And if you're doing a piece of research, really you want to search Embase and Medline almost as a minimum. So I'm going to show you that, but you know, you might be doing searches where you think, well, you know, because it's maybe more nursing focused, so you want to search CINAHL or BNI, so you may need to search the other interfaces as well. So yeah, I'm going to focus on Ovid, but if anybody wants another separate session on how to use any of the other interfaces, I'm more than happy to do that. And I am going to send over guidance of all 3 interfaces as well. So, so hopefully that'll help a little bit too. So in fact, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to access the database itself. So again, I've popped all the links on the PowerPoints, but I'm just, because I like to, going to show you how to do it from the website. I've got this bar that's stuck up here and I want it to go away. Oh. So from our library website, everything is here under the evidence toolkit again, and we've already seen the kind of little database section, the drop down. So here we go. And here you go. So here they are: EBSCO, Ovid, ProQuest, and then HDAS, which is being decommissioned, so don't use that. We've also got links to just the general available databases, you know, the public ones, Cochrane, PubMed, and so on, just as a kind of quick link for you. But these are the ones that we're concentrating on today. So I'm going to have a look at Ovid. So we'll click on that. And all of them are accessed with your Open Athens account. So ignore this kind of username up there and click onto Open Athens Institutional. at the bottom, and then that will log in with your Open Athens account. If it does ask you to choose your institution, you'll notice that 9 times out of 10, the Northern Carolines isn't available as an institution. It's always NHS in England, just to confuse you all a little bit more. But once you've done it once, it saves it, so you don't have to do it every time. And then, yeah, you'd enter your username and password, but obviously mine's just done it automatically. And then it takes you to this page where you get to choose your databases. So because Ovid has got multiple databases, so we've got quite a few to search from. Although you can tick more than one, I highly advise against it. Always search one database at a time. And that's because when we're combining results later on, it's just not possible. It's a lot harder to do if you're searching more than one database at a time. So always choose one at a time. And I'm going to start with Embase, and I always start with Embase. And I'll explain that a little bit more later. So Embase, and then click OK. And then that will take you to the front page. And because the provider is Ovid, so no matter which database we've chosen, the screen will always look exactly the same as it is. All the functions will always be exactly the same. Just this will change. So here you can see I'm searching Embase. And of course, if I was searching a different database, then that would be reflected there. After logging in with your Athens account, always log in with your personal account as well. So create a personal account if you don't have one already, and then log in with the My Account button. You can see here mine's just remembered my details and log in. You need to log into your personal account. It's just a lot better for if you're saving results later on, especially if you're doing like mad long searches. You don't want to lose all of that as soon as you close the window. So make sure you're logged into your personal account. And then to get back to that search screen, we click on search, sorry. And then here we are again. So that's logging in. So we'll leave it at that for now. So before you start a search, it's really important that the question that you're searching is clear and focused. If your search is quite vague or open-ended, it's just a lot more difficult to search, really. So a lot of preparation goes into before the database search, and to make sure that you can prepare, you've got a focused question. We're going to identify some search concepts and then some relevant search terms before we even get to searching. A lot goes into the prep, and that's because you don't want to start searching and then realizing like, oh no, I should have included this, or maybe my question isn't good enough for what it is that I'm looking for. So just develop all of that before even starting the database search. So this is the search I'm going to work with today, just to give you an example. So the question is psychological treatments for anxiety in people with traumatic brain injury. So this is what I mean by a clear and focused question. I've got my population, which is people with traumatic brain injury. I have my intervention, which is psychological treatments, and my outcome, which is anxiety. And that's kind of what you want. You want it to be as focused as possible. The more parts you have to your question, the more focused it is and the less results you're going to get, basically. So of course, if my search was just psychological treatment for anxiety, then I'm going to have loads more results than I am if I'm searching for psychological treatment for anxiety in people with TBI. So once you've got your question and you're happy with it, the next thing that you would do is break it up into different concepts. So you've probably heard of frameworks like Pico. It's always well advertised, and there's actually loads of frameworks. If you Google literature search frameworks, you'll find loads. Pico, Spider, Picos, all sorts of different things, and they're just helpful for you to break up your search a little bit for when we start searching for them. You don't have to use a framework. You can just kind of play it by eye, I guess, and break your search up into different parts, what you think is logical. And that's what I tend to do. I don't really tend to use a framework. But if you are using one, and I'm using Pico as my example, then Pico in this case would means P for population, I for intervention, C for comparison, and O for outcome. So for our example search, psychological treatment for anxiety in people with traumatic brain injury, the population is traumatic brain injury patients, the intervention, psychological treatment, there is no comparison, and then the outcome here is anxiety. Once you've broken up your search into different elements or different concepts, then just think to yourself, do you actually need to search for all of these? Just because it's part of your search question doesn't mean you're actually going to search for each part of that question in the database. So And it's something that's worth considering. Start with less and add more if you feel like you're getting too many results. So in my search, really, the only thing that I would get rid of is the C, comparison, because you can't search for no comparison. There's just no way to do that. So I'm going to keep mine at those three concepts for my search. So we're happy with our concepts, how we've broken them up. And the next thing that we need to do then is find common alternative terms for each of our concepts or each of our PICO elements. So how do we do that? So before you start searching, you'll have done a little look around, exploratory search and seeing what's out there. You might have identified a few key papers. There might be some existing systematic reviews on the topic that you're looking at. So always have a look through all of those, see what terminology they're using, and kind of just basically just steal those and use them for your own search strategy. So what do I mean by alternative terms? Well, each element of your search, there's going to be more than one way of expressing that. So you've got things like synonyms, acronyms and abbreviations. And of course, there's loads of acronyms in healthcare. You might notice here that I've popped C.diff in there twice. So C.diff once has got a little dot and once it doesn't after the C. And I always do this on purpose, and it's just to point out that databases are really kind of pedantic. So it's not like in Google where you will search for if you search for old in Google's clever enough and it will just automatically bring up results that have elderly and aged in them as well. But databases don't do that. So you have to type in everything that you want to appear in the results. So if I was searching for C.diff without the dot, but some author somewhere had decided to pop a dot after his C, and I didn't search for that, then those search results wouldn't show up. So it's quite pedantic like that. Think about spellings and Americanizations, of course, if you're looking for international research as well. Brand names and drug names, if you're looking at that kind of thing. Lay terminology versus medical terminology. Just the different tenses around a word, and then pluralisms as well. So even just adding S onto the end of something, that's now an alternative term. Of course, some pluralisms have different endings or are spelled differently as well. And then broad and narrow. So if you're not finding a lot on your search, if you were, for example, searching infection control practices and all the different synonyms of that phrase, well, then think about what comes within infection control practices, hand washing and all those other things. So broaden your search or narrow your search in terms of terms as well. Let's have a think about all of those. So for my 3 different concepts, I've just got some ideas here. So my first concept, traumatic brain injury. So all the different ways that an author might express that: TBI, brain trauma, head trauma, cranial damage, intracranial hemorrhage spelt differently, and the list goes on. So this is just a few examples. Psychotherapy, psychological treatment, rehabilitation, counselling, talking therapies, and so on. And then anxiety, anxious, panic, stress, phobia, depression. So this is probably the part of the search that's going to take you the most time, really, is just coming up with all the different terms, all the different ways that things can be said. If you were doing a systematic review, you would want this to be as comprehensive as possible. I mean, you would really want to think of every different eventuality. And so really it depends on how comprehensive your search is. If you're doing a scoping search, it might not be necessary to list every single different way of expressing a term, but it's just good to be aware of them, to be honest. And you might not use all of them in your search. You might only use, the few obvious ones. You might start your search and realize, well, actually, this term is bringing up too many irrelevant results, and get rid of it later on. And that's fine as well. But it's just always good to be aware of all the different terminology, because, as I said, it's very annoying when you start a search and you read a paper that's used a different term and you're like, oh, I should have included that in my original search. And then you almost have to start again. So get all of that down at the beginning of your search. And so how we'd be searching for this, when we're searching in a database, all of our different concepts will link together with and all the terms within a concept will link with or. So if I search in a database for TBI or brain injury or head trauma or cranial damage, because I don't care which one the article's using, it's just got to use one of them, and all of the different concepts from all the different terms from concept 2, and all the different terms for concept 3. And then basically what a database will do is we'll mix and match all the different possibilities, take any of those and any of those and any of those, so that you get your results. Your articles will have at least one term from each concept in them, basically. But I'm going to show you that in practice as well. So what goes into a database search? Well, we've got free text searching. So that's just searching in the search bar. You might search for titles, abstracts, keywords. Some of you may be familiar with that already. We're basically searching for what the author has written, and trying to find the results out of that. And then the second part is subject headings. And subject headings are basically like tags that have been assigned to each article. They're not written by the author, they're written by the indexer. So whoever indexes the article into the database will pop subject headings on them. And they're from a controlled list, of controlled vocabulary list. So whereas the author can write whatever he wants in the title and abstract, the subject headings can't be whatever anybody wants them to be. They're selected from a list. I mean, it's more of a giant book really than it is a list, but it's just worth knowing that. So I'm going to go into both of these, and I'm going to start with free text searching. So because we'll have identified so many different ways of saying the same thing, you know, all of our different alternative terms, we do need a few little tips because we don't want to be typing all of that into a database. It would take us all day. So one of the first tips for free text searching is truncation, which is this little star. And what that does is once we pop that onto the end of a word, it'll change that word into a stem, and then the database will find any kind of other things that follow that word, you know, anything that links onto it. So for example, if we typed in teen and popped a star at the end, then the database will also find, as well as teen, it will find teenage, teens, teenagers, you know, all of those different alternative terms. So we don't have to bother writing them all out. Same with anxiety, it would find all the different endings, and rehab, rehabilitation, rehabilitative. The only thing I would say about this to look out for is always make sure that your star goes, you know, in an appropriate place. You don't want to pop it too early in the word. You know, if I did AN star, then I would find all the words that begin with AN, and of course they're not all going to be relevant to my search. So just kind of watch out for that. The next one is wildcards, and it's the same, so it's a star again, and that can be used to substitute for one character within a word as well. So our first example is hemorrhage, because of course there's an American spelling, and I don't care if it's an American article or a British article that I find, but you know, I might not want to write the word hemorrhage out twice when I'm searching. So if we pop a little star, that substitutes for either one letter or no letters. So it will find hemorrhage or hemorrhage with one letter with the A there. I can also use that at the end as well. So I've popped 2 stars here, so that will find hemorrhage and hemorrhaging, because I've stuck at the end there. And then again with a woman, if I've popped the star where the E or the A would go, because of course different tenses of the word. The one thing I want to mention here really is just that the star, it works for most interfaces, and I use it in this way, but there are additional options. There's question marks and dollar signs and hashtags which can be used instead, and they all slightly vary. So some of them will be like, you know, you definitely want one letter here. You want up to a number of letters to replace the missing, you know, the star or the question mark that you use. They get a little bit more complicated. So if you do want to use any of these additional ones, I would just suggest reading the help section of whatever database you're searching, just to make sure you're getting it right. In general, the star does what it needs to enough. So I usually just stick to that. But it is worth checking out if you do want to have a look at the other symbols as well. Speech marks. So most databases, not all of them, but most databases, if you're searching for a phrase and you don't pop speech marks around the phrase, if it's more than one word, then it will search for those words, but it might search for them in 2 different places. You know, in the case of the example here, we've got brain injury. If I didn't pop the speech marks around it, then, you know, the database might find the word brain in the titles of the articles and injury in the abstract. So it's finding the words, but not together. So they might not be related to each other in that way, and therefore my results are a little bit more irrelevant. So sticking speech marks around a phrase will keep those words together, so that, you know, you'll find them in different places. Also note that I've popped a little star at the end so I can find injury and injuries. So you can use two kind of tricks together. So I can use speech marks and stars and they'll both still work. So that's completely fine to do as well. I've popped a note to be careful not to overuse speech marks because they might limit your findings too much. And I've found this when people have asked me to search, to look at their search strategies. They're just popping speech marks around everything without thinking of the different variations that that terminology might have. So, for example, I had a nursing student and she was doing some sort of literature search about nursing students. And so she popped nursing students in her speech marks, which is fine. But there are other ways of saying nursing student. You know, you can say student nurses, students who study nursing. You know, there are different ways. So if you pick in one and stick in speech marks around it, always think of all the other alternative phrases as well. And because of that, there is another kind of little trick that you can use, and that is the proximity marker. So in my previous example, I popped brain injury in speech marks, so that would stay together. But actually, there might be other ways that brain injuries are expressed in an article, and I'm limiting myself too much if I'm popping them in speech marks. So what the proximity marker does, if I pop the proximity marker in between two words, then that will keep those two words in proximity of each other. So we have ADJ3. So ADJ is the proximity marker, and 3 is just the number I've chosen. This number can change to any number that you want, but in the case of 3, it would make sure that two terms are no more than 3 words apart. So if I change it to 4, then they'd be no more than 4 words apart, and so on. So we've got brain, ADJ3, and injury. So notice I've used the star so I can find variations if there are any. So if I write that into a database, that will then find brain injuries. So the two words are next to each other. I've added injuries because I've got my star. It would find, for example, stroke injured brain, where the two words are flipped now. So injure is before brain. They're still next to each other. And it would also find, for example, traumatic injury to the brain. So I've got two words in between. And it's a little bit misleading because that's what actually 3 words apart means in this case. So 3 words apart means 2 words in the middle. So it's not really that helpful for us, but that's what that means. And they can be flipped around. But so that just makes sure that those 2 words are in the vicinity of each other, you know, that I'm not going to find them in 2 completely different places in my article. So I know that they're still, you know, they're still related to each other in somehow, but it prevents me from restricting myself too much. And it also helps me to not have to come up with all the different variations. You know, I'm not going to type in injury to the brain as part of my search strategy. So brain, ADJ, injure, it just makes that so much easier for me so I don't have to think of all of those different variations myself. Another note on this is that ADJ is the proximity marker for Ovid, which I'm showing you today. But on the EBSCO databases, it's different. It's N and then the number. If you're searching ProQuest, it's N / then the number. And if you were searching Cochrane and Web of Science, then it would be near / and then the number. So again, do check the kind of help section of each database that you're checking, just to make sure of the different syntax codes that they use. But yeah, ADJ is what we're going to work with Ovid today. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start this search now on Ovid. So you can see I've got my first concept and I've kind of changed it. So I've changed brain injury to brain ADJ3. I've added a few others, which I'm going to talk you through while I search for them. So I'm going to start searching that. So I'm going to start with brain injury. So I've got my Ovid database we signed in before, and you'll see that there's all these different options up here. Find citation, search tools, yada yada. And really, the only things that you're going to be using, we don't want to do a basic search because it is just too basic. It's search fields, and advanced search we'll use later on as well. So I'm going to start with search fields. And as that suggests, that means that we can search for different fields. So we've got all the fields that are available within Embase in this case. But for most searches, all you really need to do is search abstract and the title. If you were doing a systematic review, you might want to search for, you know, a few more. But abstract and title is more than enough for a normal kind of piece of research. You don't really want to search for all fields because you'll just get all sorts of results. So title and abstract is more than enough most of the time. So I'm going to start with brain. Look, you can see I've done this before. Brain, ADJ3, Inja, and then star. I always pop any kind of syntax in capital letters, ADJ in capital letters. Some databases require it to be capital letters, not all of them. But as a habit, I always then do it in capital letters. What that then means, though, for those databases that require you to pop syntax in capital letters, if you're searching for acronyms, which we tend to write in capital letters, sometimes a database can be confused, and because it's in capitals, it'll think it's some sort of syntax. So if you're searching for acronyms, I would always search for them in lowercase. Don't search for them capitals. Just you might get an error message and wonder why it is, and that's usually the case. So here I've got brain with my star, ADJ3, Inja, star. I've searched in title and abstract, and then I'm just going to click on the search button. And then that will show up at the top eventually. Lovely. So it's always hidden in Ovid, they always hide it. But at the top here, you can see search history. So if I click on search history, there I've got my first line, brain injury, and I've got 113,000 results. So that's a lot. But that's the start of my search. So we're happy with that. And I'm going to move on to the next one, which is head, trauma, or injury. So I'm going to talk you through this. So just like brain injury, I've got head, ADJ3. But now I want to search for trauma, sure. But maybe I also want to search for injury. So trauma or injure. So now I can search for two of these. So I've got head, ADJ3, trauma or injury. It's like a little maths equation though. So you have to pop the second part into parentheses so that the database knows what you're ADJing. So in this case, head, ADJ3, trauma or injury. So that is basically equal to head, ADJ3, trauma or head, ADJ3, injury. But you can make it as a search string like this just to make it a little bit easier for yourself, so you don't have to have loads of separate lines. You can just pop them all together. If you do feel more comfortable just doing one at a time, that's fine as well. You can just do head ADJ trauma star, search for that, and then do head ADJ injure star, search for that, and then it'll be on separate lines. But I just wanted to show you this in case you're feeling a little bit confident. So you can do trauma, or injure in parentheses, so the database knows what you're combining with what. It's like a little maths equation, isn't it? And then click on search. And then here we have our second line. Not as many results for this one, 46,000. 1, 2, and then let's search for one more, which I'm going to go with cranial or... Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit more complex. Again, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, feel free to always search for everything on separate lines, like I did with line 1. But if you are feeling a bit more confident, then you can do things like cranial or intracranial. Pop that in parentheses, and then ADJ3, and then we've got injure star or trauma star or another one. Let's go with damage. So I've got all my stars at the end, so it finds damage, damaging, traumatic, all the rest of it. And my ADJ3 between the two different kind of concepts that I'm searching for here. And that will then mix and match cranial or intracranial with either injury, trauma, damage, and make sure that they're always within 3 words of each other. So this is kind of like a bit of an advanced search string, basically. But as I said, you can keep them simple, like line number 1, but it just saves time to kind of pop them all together like this. But don't worry if you don't feel confident enough to pop them together as search strings. I just wanted to show you, just so you could kind of, in case you were up for it. And then we'll click search. Lovely. So I'm going to leave that there for the free text at the moment, and we're going to come back to this in a minute. So we've searched for our titles and abstracts, but what we haven't done yet is search for subject headings. So that's what's coming next on here. So as I mentioned, subject headings are kind of like tags assigned to each article. And so that means that they're not as flexible as free text searching allows you to be, because of course in free text searching, the author has been able to write whatever they want, whereas when it comes to subject headings, they're selected from a list. Sometimes subject headings are called thesaurus terms, sometimes they're called mesh terms, but they're all the same thing, so don't be confused by that. And as I said, think of them as like hashtags of an article. Each database, so Medline, Embase, and so on, will all have different subject headings. So if your database was more focused on psychology or on nursing, then they would probably have more psychology or nursing subject headings. So just be aware of that. So just because you found a subject heading on one database doesn't mean it exists in another one. So this is how I explain subject headings to people. It's a bit weird, but hopefully it gets the point across. So this is a dress. So let's say that we can find this dress on ASOS. And in ASOS, this dress is called, the title of the dress is Soft Layered Gown in Taupe. So whoever's written that has decided that this dress is taupe in colour. And the description of the dress is beautiful summer gown, perfect for weddings. So think of that as the abstract of the dress. So we've got the title and the abstract. So if I were to search for this dress in ASOS and I typed in lilac dress, because that's what I think it is and that's what I'm trying to find, and this would fit the bill for my, for my results, lilac dress in the search bar, which searches for the titles and abstracts, the titles and descriptions of the dresses within ASOS. This dress wouldn't show up because it doesn't say the word lilac or the word dress anywhere in the title or the abstract. It's not been, the authors decided to go with completely different words that I probably wouldn't have used myself. So, however, in ASOS, there are categories that I can search through as well. So these are like the subject headings. And so if I was looking through the categories, I would find this dress under occasion dresses. I'd also find it under bridal dresses and under maxi dresses as well, because it's all three of those things. And if I were to narrow it down by colour, then I'd find it under lilac, pink and purple. ASOS, in my fictional version, it doesn't have a category for taupe, so it can't be put under the colour taupe because it doesn't exist. And as I said, it's controlled, so you can't just go adding whatever categories you want. You have to do with what's there, basically. But because it can be interpreted in different ways, lilac, pink and purple, it's popped them under all three of those categories. So if I'm looking for a lilac dress, it's important that I'm not just searching for it in the title and abstract, I'm also looking within the categories, because otherwise I'm not going to find everything that I'm looking for. And so in the exact same way, that's how articles work. So here I've got an article, I've got the title, abstracts, and then the subject headings of an article, which is about psychotherapy, but it doesn't use the word psychotherapy anywhere in the title or the abstract. So if I was only searching titles and abstracts for psychotherapy, I'm not going to find it because it's not using it. It uses the word psychoeducational, which, I might have searched for as well, but if I didn't, then, I haven't found it. So that's why it's important that we search for subject headings as well as searching for the title and the abstract. So I hope that makes sense. I know subject headings can be a little bit of a mystery to a lot of people. So I'm going to carry on with my search now, and I'm going to search for subject headings too. So I'm going to click escape and go back to my search. But to search for subject headings, we need to use the advanced search option. So I'm going to click on the advanced search. And then we've given another search bar. And what we need to make sure of here is that this box is ticked, map term to subject heading. And I am looking for, what is my search about? Brain injury. So I'm going to look for traumatic brain injury. Why not? Traumatic brain injury. And here, because I'm searching, what I'm going to do now is basically browse the subject heading catalogue, as it were. So I don't need to use any codes and speech marks and stuff. That all doesn't matter here. I'm just going to click on search, make sure that's ticked. Click on that. And then here we go. So it gets a little bit overwhelming here if you've never seen this before. So I've got my subject heading. So this subject heading exists. Sometimes you might search for something and it doesn't exist, in which case it'll usually give you a kind of alternative. But in this case, traumatic brain injury is in the subject heading catalogue. You'll also see that I can use it as a keyword. I kind of advise against this if you're just doing a normal search. A keyword, if I were to tick that, that would automatically also search. It would search for the title in the abstract. It would also search heading word, drug trade name, original title, device manufacturer, device trade name, all sorts of other fields. And it would just bring up so many results. So I wouldn't really do that. Unless you were doing a systematic review, I would not bother searching for anything as a keyword. And then I've got three options here. I can select it, I can explode it, and I can focus it. So when a article is being given subject headings, so when the indexer assigns subject headings to an article, it will give it maybe about, I don't know, 4 major subject headings. So that means this article is about this subject. And then maybe up to, I don't know, like 15 or so other subject headings. And then that will mean, okay, this article isn't focusing on the subject, but it is mentioned within the article, you know, so it's worth reading if that's what you're looking for. So if I wanted to only look for articles where it was a major focus, then I would click focus or just select. And then explode means that I am selecting this subject heading and anything that comes underneath it. So how do I know what comes underneath it? I'll just click on the title, traumatic brain injury, and then it takes you to this horrible screen. And here I have my traumatic brain injury. It's used for all these other terms. So if I typed those into the search bar initially, if I typed in cerebral trauma, traumatic brain injury would still come up because it's used for all these terms as well. So that's what that means. Broader terms means the subject in which traumatic brain injury comes under. So that's so if it was like a tree, brain injury would be, you know, the main branch. Traumatic brain injury would branch off brain injury, and then the narrower terms would branch off even further. So we've got chronic, traumatic, all these words that I can't say. So if I pressed explode on traumatic brain injury, that would automatically choose that and also all of the narrower terms as well. In this case, there are only 2 narrow terms. I could just click them separately if I wanted to. But sometimes you'll find, you know, you've got quite a few, so it's easier to just click explode. But do have a look at them as well. You know, you might not even want to include all of them in your search. Some of them might not be relevant. So it might just be better just to tick those individually. In my case, I'm just going to stick to traumatic brain injury. I'm not going to explode it. I'm just going to leave it as selected, and I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to click on continue. This next bit is about kind of the sometimes called floating subheadings, and that means that we can now narrow down our subject heading even further. So if we were only looking at the diagnosis of traumatic brain injury or only looking at the prevention and we weren't interested in all the rest of it, then we could narrow our subject heading down even further. If you're new to this kind of thing, I would just avoid it or just avoid it all. Don't take anything, just include them all and continue, because it doesn't hurt to include them all. It just, of course, will make your search a little bit broader. Press continue. And now we have traumatic brain injury at the bottom of our search string. And you would carry on like that if there were other subject headings that you wanted to add. Search for those again, add them to the bottom. But for now, because it's just a little demo, we'll just keep it at that. And this is our first concept as we've got on our thing here. So I'm happy with that. I think I'm finished for now. I've got a subject heading, and now I'm going to tick all of these and then combine them with OR, because that's what we want to do. We want to combine everything from our concepts with OR, and then combine our concepts, the whole concept, with AND. So I've got my four things, and I'm going to click on OR, and then I'm going to get a new line 5, which is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Ovid always hides the lines at the top, so you can press this expand button and it'll show you those again. So that's our first concept. And now I'm going to move on to the second concept, which I'm just going to do quite quickly. Our second concept is psychotherapy, psychological trauma. I'm just going to copy and paste this to make my life a little bit easier. So again, I'm going to go back to search fields. I've got title and abstract is already ticked because I ticked them from before. Psychotherapy with my little star, so it finds therapies, therapy, etc. Click search, and then I've added it to line 6. Carry on with this one. I'm going to go with, here I've got psychological ADJ3, treat or therapy, so treatment, therapies. So either of those terms will be within 3 words of psychological. Search for that. Oh, I've included unsupported characters. Okay, I don't know what I've done there. Oh, I think it's because I've got a little space. Yeah, I had a space before psychological, and now all of a sudden the database doesn't work. So be aware of little things like that. They're very finicky like that. Lovely. And then let's just do one more counsel, which is, in fact, let's do talking therapy because we haven't done one with speech marks yet. So here you can see on this one, talking therapy, because it's 2 words and I want them to stay together, I popped the speech marks around them. And then I've still got the star at the end of therap, so you can find therapies and whatnot. And then search for that. 6, 7, 8. So we'll leave it at that for our free text terms, but I'm going to now search for a thesaurus term, a subject heading as well. So again, just like before, I'm going to go to the advanced search section. I'm going to type in psychotherapy and hope that it's somewhere within the subject heading catalogue. My map term to subject heading box is ticked. I'm going to click on search. And here we go. So this time it's giving me quite a few different options, and sometimes it does that. Sometimes you'll just get one, sometimes a few. I've got interpersonal therapy, I've got psychotherapy. I'm going to tick both of those because they both seem like they're relevant to me. I'm also going to go into psychotherapy and see what else there is that I might want to look at. So the broader terms are psychiatric treatment, and then all the narrow terms. So here we've got loads of narrow terms. So if I wanted to include all of those, it would just be easier for me to click explode. But I always advise having a look through them just to make sure. And then just tick anything that you think. I'm going to click on group therapy. Why not? Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So I've clicked on group therapy. I've got psychotherapy ticked, and then continue. This will always be combined with or, and that's always what you'll want it to stay at. So you don't have to fiddle around with that. Click continue. And then here I've got those 2 on the same line. There is an option, I think, to search for them on separate lines. And you'll notice I search for everything on a separate line. Some people pop things together on one line. They'll have one concept on just one single line. I like to do everything separately because then I can see how many results there are. And it's easier to point out if I've made a mistake or not as well. And it just keeps it more organized. So I advise keeping things on separate lines. You can very well pop things like talking therapy, for example, and then write or, and then do psychotherapy, and then or, and then carry on instead of popping them all on separate lines. But I advise against that. Search for each thing individually. So here's my second concept. So I'm going to, again, just like I did with my first concept, tick all the individual bits, combine that with or, because they're terms from the same concept. And then as we go along, we're going to combine with and the 2 concepts. So my first concept is line 5, because that combines all of the words from the first concept. I'm going to tick on that. And my second concept is line 10, because that combines all of those, line 10. And then this time we're going to combine with and. So that will then mix and match all of those with all of those, basically. Click on and. And so you can see, and then it starts narrowing down your results. So whereas before, you know, we've got hundreds of thousands of results. Now it starts to narrow them down, because once you've added a concept to another concept, you know, you've narrowed your search down basically. And then now when I add another concept, it will narrow that down even further. So I'm just going to finish this because why not? So anxiety, panic, stress, depression. So back to search fields. I'm going to search for anxiety, maybe? No, anxiety. Just because the word anxious as well. And I'm pretty sure there's not going to be, hopefully, other words that begin with those 4 letters exactly. I haven't checked it out. But, you know, they're just things to look out for. Click on search, anxiety. My next one is stress. Search. And then I'll just search for depression. Depressed, look, you can see I've done this already. Depressed with my little star, so it finds depression, depressive, etc. Search. And then just like before, I'm also going to search for a subject heading. Obviously, I'm almost limited to 1 subject heading each time here, but don't feel like, in fact, you shouldn't, definitely, only search 1 subject heading, especially for my last concept, anxious, which includes anxious depression. There's probably going to be multiple subject headings that I want to include here. So I've got anxiety, narrow terms. I'm going to explode this one. In fact, explode all of that. So it includes all of those, and then search for that. Include all the subject headings. That's fine. Continue. And then I'm also going to search for, in fact, so you can see here that I've exploded it. It says EXP, anxiety. And then I'm also just going to search for depression just to finalize the search a little bit. And again, lots of different options. So always worth having a look to see if there's any other subject headings that you want to include. Depression and again, you know, you can choose all of these. I might want to choose mood disorder this time as well. And although it's a broader term to depression, it's only going to choose that term. So it's not going to choose anything else that comes within mood disorder. But I could click on that and find out, you know, what else there might be in there. So I'm just going to click depression, mood disorder, and then continue with that. So here's my last concept, the anxiety concept, anxiety, stress, depression, and then my three subject headings, combine those with or, and then add that to the last line of my previous. So line 11 here is concepts 1 and 2 together, and now I'm adding concept 3 to that as well. So combine that with and here we are. I've got my 464 results, which is nice. That's a nice manageable amount. So now we want to look at those results. In fact, let's save our search first. So this is our final search. If we click on more, we can click the save button. And now we can give this a name. I'm just going to call it test 5 because I've got so many tests. Click on save. And then that's now saved in my folders, which I'll show you in a second. But I'm also going to have a look at those results. So display results and then move down to the bottom. So here are all my results basically. On the side, I can see all the different terms I've used. I can sort them in different ways by publication date and language and whatever else that there is. I can narrow it down by years. So if I just wanted to have a look at the last 5 years, or if I wanted to choose the last 10 years or so, I'm going to click on last 5 years. And then if you want to have a look at different subjects or journals or whatever as well, you can do that. And then when we go through our results and when we work our way through our 400 results, if the full text is available, then just click on this little full text availability and that should search it for you. It doesn't always work. Some of these databases just don't link very well. So if it's not working very well, I would just copy and paste that and search for it in the discovery tool that I showed you earlier, because if we have a full text for it, the link will just be straight there. So that's what I kind of advise for that. But you can just have a look at the abstracts and titles, and if you think yeah, this is helpful for me, then you can just add that particular article to your projects. I don't think I have a folder. Okay. So I've got an existing project. I can just have a new project. So let's do test 5 again. You can give it a description if you like, add items, close window, and then you can just carry on adding different references to your projects like that. Add to test 5, add, and work your way through it like that. To have a look at all your saved bits, if you go to the My Workspace section here at the top, and here you've got your folders at the side. Here's my test 5 folder. Click on that, and then here we have our articles that we've saved. And again, if you want to try check for full text availability that way, but really I would just advise copy and pasting them, sticking them in Discovery, because then you've got there's a link for it straight away. So hopefully that is cleared that up a little bit for you. Let me go back to my search, because you can also, another thing you can do is add an alert to your search. So we've got 464 results now, and we've worked through them and we're very happy. But this is an ongoing project, and if there's more articles that are being added to the database that match my search strategy, then I want to hear about them, so I can create an auto alert as well. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Add a name to your search, how often do you want to get an auto alert on it, weekly, monthly, every day, and how you want to receive it. And then you'll get emailed updates if there's new results for your search as well. So that's quite helpful. The last thing I just wanted to mention when it comes to searching is database searching is not an exact science. You will always get irrelevant results, and most of the time there'll be relevant results that probably won't show up in your database search. Unfortunately, it just is the way it is. So when you're happy with when you've got all your results together and you've got yourself your bunch of papers that you're happy with, I always recommend doing a bibliography search. So looking through the bibliographies of those papers just to see if there's any other papers that might be relevant. Doing a citation search. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Google Scholar, but I am just going to show you very quickly what I mean. Let me just go Google Scholar. So if we pick an article, back to search. Just going to pick a random article here, this one. If you copy that into Google Scholar, then Google Scholar will tell you who cited it. And so, the chances are that that article might be relevant for you as well. So you can have a little look to see, because, it might not have been included in the database search. And then finally, PubMed also has a very similar feature where you pop in the article and on the side it says similar articles. So have a little look through that. So I always advise just picking up those little bits just to get those dribs and drabs that the database search might have missed. And that's it for my database searching for you. So as I said, I've only shown you Ovid, and of course there is also the other databases, the other interfaces, ProQuest and EBSCO as well. EBSCO is very similar to Ovid, so hopefully you'll be able to transfer your skills quite easily. ProQuest is a little bit more complicated, so if you do want to do a search on ProQuest, I'm happy to run through that as well at a later date with you. But I'm also going to send you guides for all three of them as well, so you can have a little play around yourself. So any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn my camera back on.
Thank you so much, Ramona. There are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if people want to just ask Ramona those. I think as Louise, actually the first one is about, can we just confirm whether you need to subscribe to get an Open Athens access?
So Open Athens access, you just need to apply for one, and you can do that with the library. You can send us an email. Honestly, the easiest way is if you go to the library membership form, join the library, and there's just a box that says, do you want Athens? Tick that box and we'll sort you out. So we'll just send you the details for that.
Can I just ask, because we're just changing email, haven't we? And I've always had an open access with at my NHS mail. We're going to NCA, so do we have to apply for a new one?
Oh, that's a good question. That's one of those technical things that I'm not sure about. I would just apply for a new one anyway, because we can see, we've got all your details. So if we can see that you've already got one, then we can just send you it, or change your passwords or change your email address and whatever. So applying anyway doesn't hurt.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about, I think you mentioned it at the end actually, about an easy flow diagram to sort of follow all the different stages, because there's so many stages on that. I got a little bit lost towards the end.
Yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming, definitely, but no, yeah. I have everything that I've shown you today. I've popped it on like an instructions sheet, so I'll send all of that over.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I think that's probably all of the questions. I'm sure Ramona would be happy to answer any further questions by email if anyone comes across anything. Hopefully you've really got something, you've all got something really useful out of that, in terms of being able to search the databases a bit easier to get all your evidence base. And hopefully we'll see you all at the Centre for Clinical Care launch, which will then give us an opportunity to actually network face to face, which is always nice to be able to do. So thanks very much, everybody. We'll close the session. Thank you, Ramona, very much for that.
Thank you so much. And Claire, is it okay if I send you everything and you disseminate?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be brilliant. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for all your kind thank yous. I can see them all in the search.
Thanks, Ramona. That was really interesting sessions. Yeah, obviously we got a kind of bit lost in between the search and stuff. It's too much information.
It's a lot of information.
I'm sure the PDF and presentation would really help. Yeah,
absolutely. And I appreciate it. It's a lot to go through. So hopefully it just builds familiarity. But yeah, of course you'll have all the help as well. And I'll always be at hand.
Thank you. At least we know where we are starting at. Like, before this we didn't have any information we could get, from the library and sources and stuff, but at least now we could get starting on research and
brilliant.
That's good to hear, isn't it? And the next session is about actually critically appraising the articles and getting the best out of the evidence that you've got. So please do join that as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Good.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.